When it comes to Russia, we had one policy and one policy only: the strategic defeat of Russia. And we disguised it with a whole bunch of other stuff. But at the end of the day, it was just that. We now have a president who says, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not out for the strategic defeat of Russia. I'm out for genuine, peaceful coexistence. This is the real Russian reset that's taking place right now. The real Russian reset. And that's why you can never bring up the past when talking about what's happening today, because there is a firewall now that's been built. It's called the Trump Revolution. He is destroying the deep state that made all that possible. USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, the State Department, it's all been destroyed. It doesn't exist anymore. It's not out there doing bad things. The CIA is paralyzed right now with people running away because he's not playing that game. So we can't talk about the past and compare it to Donald Trump. When you talk about what Trump's doing today, you have to start from scratch. I'm not saying it's perfect. People should be looking at it and judging it critically, but you can't sit there and go, well, you know, the last time we did this, when we tried to do the old Budapest thing with the neutrality, why are you bringing that up? That system no longer exists. Well, you know, Obama tried the Russian reset. Who cares? That system's dead. This is all brand new. And you have to only assess it from what it is today, because there is no linkage between what's happening today and what happened in the past.
The entire foundation of American diplomacy exposed as a lie. For years, it wasn't about peace, negotiations, or mutual respect. It was about regime change, manipulation, and dominance. But now, something has shattered that system. Scott Ritter just laid out a chilling revelation. What the U.S. once called diplomacy was, in reality, a relentless push to bring down foreign leaders, especially in Russia. The so-called Russian reset was never about cooperation. It was a weaponized strategy to keep Putin out of power. But now, Ritter claims, Trump is demolishing that deep state machinery. The intelligence agencies, the shadow networks, the regime change apparatus, it's all crumbling. A firewall has been built. And if he's right, the entire global order is shifting before our eyes. After analyzing Scott Ritter's insights, it's time to shift our focus to a major development in the geopolitical chessboard, one that could have lasting consequences for the war in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin has made a stunning move, pushing for a buffer zone along the Ukrainian border. This is not just about securing territory, it's about shaping the future of the conflict itself. At the same time, an American delegation is heading to Moscow, raising questions about possible diplomatic maneuvers behind the scenes. What does Putin really want? And why is the U.S. suddenly making this unexpected trip? Let's break it down. In a high-stakes meeting at one of Russia's key command posts, Vladimir Putin met with the chief of the general staff, Valery Gerasimov. This was not a routine discussion. It was a war council, a moment of reckoning where Putin demanded a bold new strategy. His directive was crystal clear. Russia must create a security buffer zone along the Ukrainian border. This was not a suggestion, it was an order. Why is this so significant? Because a buffer zone isn't just a defensive measure. It's an expansionist move disguised as security policy. It signals that Russia isn't just defending its borders. It is actively pushing deeper into Ukrainian territory. Over the past 6 months, the K region has witnessed some of the most intense fighting of the war. Russian losses have been brutal, but Ukrainian casualties have been even worse, with 90% of their personnel losses and 40% of their equipment losses concentrated in this area. This is why Putin sees an opportunity to crush Ukraine's defenses in one decisive push. Gerasimov presented a grim but strategic assessment. Russian forces had already breached the border at multiple points and had entered the Sumy region. More than 400 Ukrainian soldiers had been taken prisoner, and over 600 Russian troops had participated in an operation to seize control of vital infrastructure, including a key pipeline in the Suja sector. Putin listened, then laid down his vision. Russia must not only continue the offensive, but also ensure that Ukrainian resistance in this region is utterly broken. But here's where it gets even more alarming. Russia has now declared that Ukrainian soldiers captured in this region will be treated as terrorists, not prisoners of war. This means they will not be protected under the Geneva Conventions. This chilling statement underscores Russia's intent to rewrite the rules of engagement, increasing the psychological and strategic pressure on Ukrainian forces. the strategic value of Sumy, a Russian military dream. Sumy is not just another Ukrainian city. It is a critical stronghold that sits dangerously close to the Russian border. By capturing the region, Russia would achieve multiple strategic objectives, shortening the front line. Right now, Russia is forced to stretch its forces across a 300-kilometer border. If they succeed in taking control of Sumy and its surrounding areas, they could reduce this to just 174 kilometers, making defense and supply lines more manageable. Neutralizing Ukraine's drone threat. Ukrainian drones have been hammering Russian territory, with Moscow itself coming under attack. The majority of these drone launches originate from the Sumy and Chernihiv regions. If Russia seizes control, they can push Ukrainian drone operations deeper into the country, reducing the effectiveness of strikes on Russian infrastructure. Getting within striking distance of Kyiv. Perhaps the most alarming consequence of this buffer zone is that it would bring Russian forces within 180 kilometers of Kyiv. From this position, Russian missile systems could target the Ukrainian capital with greater precision and frequency, putting Ukraine's leadership under constant pressure. For Putin, this isn't just about securing the border, it's about preparing for a future conflict. He knows that sooner or later, negotiations will take place, likely between Russia and the US, rather than directly with Ukraine. If Russia can secure better positions now, it will have greater leverage in any ceasefire or settlement talks. One of the most critical dynamics at play is the West's increasing pressure for a ceasefire. Reports suggest that Western leaders are trying to convince Russia to agree to a 30-day ceasefire, allowing Ukraine time to regroup, rearm, and prepare for the next phase of the war. But Putin is well aware of this strategy. He knows that a temporary pause would only benefit Ukraine, giving them a chance to replenish their dwindling supplies and reinforce defensive positions. For Russia, agreeing to a ceasefire now would be a strategic blunder. This is why, instead of entertaining peace talks, Putin is pushing for an escalation. The logic is simple. If Russia can gain ground before negotiations begin, they will have a stronger hand in dictating the terms of any future agreement. The buffer zone isn't just about security. It's about ensuring that Ukraine never has the ability to strike deep into Russian territory again. Amid this unfolding crisis, a surprising development has emerged. An American delegation is en route to Moscow. This is not a routine diplomatic visit. The timing raises major questions. Why now? What message is Washington sending? There are several possibilities. Back-channel negotiations. Despite public rhetoric, the U.S. might be looking for ways to de-escalate tensions behind closed doors. Washington understands that a direct Russian assault on Sumy could trigger a larger catastrophe, possibly dragging NATO deeper into the conflict. The delegation might be there to explore whether any diplomatic off-ramps remain. A warning to Moscow. Another possibility is that this visit is meant to issue a direct warning to Russia. If the U.S. has intelligence that Russia is preparing a large-scale assault, they may be trying to deter such action by making it clear that further aggression will be met with increased Western support for Ukraine. A deal on prisoners or sanctions. Given that hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers have been taken prisoner, the U.S. could be attempting to negotiate their release or seeking to prevent further war crimes. Alternatively, Washington might be using the trip to signal a potential tightening of sanctions if Russia continues its escalation. Whatever the case, the fact that U.S. officials are traveling to Moscow at this critical moment suggests that the situation is far more delicate than it appears on the surface. The next few weeks will be crucial. If Russia moves forward with its buffer zone plan, we could see a dramatic escalation in the war. Ukraine, with support from the West, will fight tooth and nail to prevent Russia from gaining ground in Sumy. At the same time, the diplomatic maneuvering between Moscow and Washington could either diffuse the situation or push it toward an even deadlier phase. One thing is certain, Putin is not backing down. He sees this moment as an opportunity to change the dynamics of the war in Russia's favor. The question now is, will the West allow him to succeed?